Down the road to a tiny village came a power that tore a young family apart.
I saw it came to black cars. One continued driving on the main road and one came on our farm.
They lost 4 of their children, and then the 5th.
I told Marius, I think they are going to take the baby, and there was nothing I could do.
This is Norway, proud of its record in protecting children, but now accused by campaigners abroad and at home of a brutal excess of zeal, of taking babies into care for no good reason.
It's not one single bad case, it's a system with bad cases all the time.
Norway's Child Protection Service, Barnevernet, says it does all it can to keep families together.
We don't have any self-interest in taking as much children as we can into placement.
But parents battling the state believe all the odds are stacked against them in a system that's gone mad.
They will win just to win. They hate to lose and proven wrong, because Barnevernet is never wrong.
It's a house that had 5 children. Then it had none. Their father plays one of his favourite songs, not to entertain anyone, just to calm his nerves. Waiting, waiting. For news of whether he and his wife will ever get them back. Ruth's been at the police station again, trying desperately to convince the authorities that she and Marius are good parents. It was a long interrogation.
Yeah, I think last time was 3 hours now. I didn't count, but it's probably more. I knew more what the kids had said to the child protection and what they told the police, and I hope that they believe me.
But it's hope against hope. Their 2 girls, aged 8 and 10, their 2 boys, aged 2 and 5, and their baby were taken away in November, and Ruth and Marius's world fell apart.
I was waiting for the girls to come home from school. I was waiting for the school bus, and it passed 10-15 minutes and they didn't come. I started to get worried. I saw it came to black cars. One continued driving on the main road and one came on our farm.
Inside the car, a child protection officer.
She said that I had to come at the police station, that I had to come for interrogation. I was shocked. I asked her what's going on. She didn't want to answer that. And I said that I'm waiting for my girls. And she answered that she had them. And she wanted to take care of the boys while I'm at the interrogation. And I said it's not necessary. They can stay with my mom. She can watch them. But she insisted to take them with her. And I understood this is very serious.
4 children gone in one day. They still had the baby, but not for much longer.
It was the second day in the evening. We saw 2 cars driving here, and 2 black cars again. And I said, Ruth, I think they brought the kids home.
Were you really excited suddenly? You got really excited when you saw those cars again?
Yeah. But then I saw 4 policemen coming out of a car.
I told Marius, I think they are going to take the baby. And there was nothing I could do.
And so the baby just disappeared down the road?
Yeah. And we found out they drove 3.5-4 hours with it to Bergen.
With the baby, they drove that night to Bergen. They wrote in the report that the baby cried for a half hour. We don't know how much the baby cried on the road.
Marius and Ruth thought this wild, remote valley was an ideal place to bring up a family. But even here there are rules. And it seems that something one of their children said in school first alerted the authorities that Marius and Ruth might be breaking the law. In Norway, it forbids any corporal punishment.
We were questioned about violence or in the home. Accused for that. We admitted spanking the kids, but not every time when they do something bad. They didn't find any physical marks or anything like that when they had a medical examination on them. But the law in Norway, it's very clear until the smallest detail. It's not allowed of any physical correction.
Their lawyers wouldn't let me ask more questions because they're still under investigation, and the authorities aren't allowed to discuss this or any other individual case to protect children's anonymity.
Beginning on November 16th, when the Norwegian authorities for child protection, Barnevernet, had taken away the 5 children of Marius.
But claims that Marius and Ruth's kids and hundreds of others have been taken without adequate reason have triggered demonstrations all over the world, even if the protesters can't know all the facts. The campaign's strong abroad because Marius is an immigrant from Romania and the couple belong to an evangelical Christian community with global links. But in Norway today, there are solid members of the establishment who also feel that the country's child protection system is out of control. Ingvar's a Norwegian grandfather who's always been proud of his country. He's head of the state archive in the city of Bergen, appointed personally by the king to guard 1,000 years of documents. But now his faith in the system that they record is badly shaken.
I grew up believing that the Norwegian system was the best in the world, best for children. The UN are stating that all the time. And then suddenly I discovered that this cannot be the case. And that was because of the things that happened in my own family.
Because of what happened to this little girl, his granddaughter, who was taken away several years ago. The Norwegian Child Protection Service, known as Barnevernet, said she was non-communicative, but that's not how it looked to Ingvar.
So this was the passive, non-sounding child. She's interplaying a lot.
And how long is this before she was taken?
This is in the middle of November, so this is basically 2 months before she was taken.
She was put into emergency fostering because Barnevernet, the Child Protection Service, said she showed signs of worrisome lopsided development because her parents couldn't meet her emotional needs. They said her mother, who's from China and has now gone back there, was depressed, and her father, Eric, was simple, though he's never been diagnosed with any condition other than a slight lack of short-term memory when he was small.
I did everything. I changed nappies. First change nappies and then change clothes. Yeah.
So what did you do to kind of play with her? What did you...
Had these small toys and but at first often played with hands or maybe tickled her a little bit and
on the tummy.
Yeah.
Just days before Child Protection started their urgent assessment of the family, a doctor at their local health clinic found the little girl was developing normally. But Barnevernet said later that even if they'd known that, it wouldn't have affected their own conclusions. And to Ingvar's anger, the court that upheld the care order agreed.
We put forward a huge report on my son's psychological strengths and weaknesses. They haven't mentioned that by one word. So they are closing their eyes and they say that we can only rely on the assessments that these persons working for Barnevernet has made.
Ingvar and his wife Bente pressed the authorities to let them take over care of the little girl. But Barnevernet said that that would mean too much uncertainty, as things had gone wrong with the child while the grandparents were living in the same house. Many parents who've lost children say that Norway is less keen than other countries on letting the children stay with other relatives instead, though the state says that nearly half are kept within the wider family. For the last 5 months, Marius and Ruth, who lost their 5 children, have spent much of their lives on the road. It's been an 8-hour round trip for them to get to supervised meetings with the baby and with their little boys. The children were split up between 3 different sets of foster parents.
The 8-year-old, she has this impression that we are going to die. That's why she cannot be with us. And the 5-year-old, before Marius got to meet him too, he was asking a lot for his dad and asking why he cannot meet us both. And he told us that he dreamt that we would be together. He had this dream that we would all be together.
But for now, all Ruth and Marius can do is wait between meetings in a friend's flat in Bergen. They say that they've offered to fix whatever needs fixing about the way they behave as parents, but that Child Protection didn't even want to discuss trying to reunite the family.
So this is baby in mummy's tummy?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, he tried several times to draw the baby in the tummy. So he wants it to be perfect, you know.
Yeah.
But these he was pleased with, so he was like, yeah, there's dad and mom and that's me.
They write down their own account of every meeting with their children because they don't trust social workers to report fairly.
I don't know when we are actually really fighting to not show our feelings, because at least with the bigger boys we are told to not show any sorrow because we make the kids sad. So we really try to keep every tear inside and we keep them for ourselves until they are out of the door at least.
Of course, parents whose children are taken into care in any country are nearly always angry with the system. But I'm astonished that there's quite so much anger in Norway. It devotes more resources and attention to children and their rights than almost any country on earth. I'd like to get the other side of the story from the tiny local authority that took Ruth and Marius's kids. But they can't talk about individual cases.
We have approximately 100 and...
For this commune?
Yes, 110, I think.
I've had to go to another part of Norway to meet a child protection officer. Birger Tomter doesn't look like the kind of evil child snatcher that aggrieved parents portray. As he says, Barnevernet usually just provides guidance to parents with problems. It's only in what they regard as extreme cases that they seek care orders.
Our obligation is to help children that are endangered, and that's our main task. And our main goal is to make that possible through the parents, that we work with the parents and make the parents able to give sufficient care for their children. If there are conflict between those two, we have to take sides with the children.
You don't think you're too powerful?
In Norway we are as often criticized because we are not doing enough, or we are not doing it early enough, and there are not enough children that are given sufficient help.
The number of children taken from their parents by emergency procedure rose by 70% in a recent 5-year period. That was partly a reaction to the state's failure to protect an 8-year-old boy, Christopher, who was beaten to death by his stepfather in 2005. But did the authorities overreact? It's hard to work out whether Norway is more zealous or rigid in its child protection practices than other countries. In England, for example, it would be very unusual for children to be taken away without parents being contacted first and without serious attempts immediately afterwards to engage with the family. Maybe the cases we're looking at are very unusual in Norway too, but Norwegian experts don't think so, and that perhaps is the most significant point in this story.
More than 150 leading Norwegian professionals, psychologists, lawyers, social work experts have written a letter saying that the Child Protection Service is a dysfunctional organisation that makes major miscalculations with serious consequences.
You can either have a team.
Einar Salvason is one of the authors of the open letter to the government.
There is a lack of the human, what I would call the human factor in this system. It is a lack of empathy, a lack of really providing an atmosphere so people can learn. And you can have a good discussion about what's happening in the home. It's more like police interventions. It's more like we have to find out what's wrong with you.
In the vast majority of cases where custody of a child is disputed, the state wins and parents lose, but not always. And in this hospital in the far south of Norway, there's a little girl who was taken away from her parents, but they've now won back custody.
Hi, nice to see you. So you're Sharky, yeah? Hi, very, very nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
And this is your daughter?
Nikita.
Yeah. So how long has she been in for overnight?
She was from 7 o'clock in the evening till 10 o'clock on the Avise.
Oh, so what's that, 15 hours?
Yeah, 15 hours.
Nikita's had almost 100% kidney failure from just after she was born. She could die at any time. Now she goes home for a few hours a day between dialysis sessions. But when Child Protection took over custody, she stayed in hospital round the clock.
The first reason in the beginning it was like because they said that the doctors from hospital are scared to send Nikita with us at home. That we would almost hurt her, that we are dangerous for her.
Later, Barnevernet Child Protection also said that she hadn't bonded with Sharka or with her father Robert. But the fact that she'd spent so much time in hospital helped them to prove that that wasn't true. It meant that there were regular medical records confirming their story that the court couldn't refuse to consider. Sharka, who's Czech, and Robert, who's Norwegian, say Barnevernet even accused them of saying they wanted Nikita to die, to spare her a lifetime of pain. But the record showed they'd actually intervened more than once with suggestions that saved their daughter's life.
We have patient
diary.
since every day she was born. We have every day written from the different people like doctors and nurses.
You've written down everything that all the hospital staff had said, and what did that show?
It's showing that Barnevern is writing opposite. Then it's writing the opposite. Then it's writing, for example, doctors or nurses. But everywhere in this diary, it's written that when we came into the room, that she's just smiling and that she's happy when she sees parents.
They never talk with anyone. They never been in our house. They never seen us with Nikita. They seen Nikita on one occasion. That's it.
Sharka and Robert's experience, and that of another Czech mother, have fuelled big protests against Norway in the Czech Republic, protests backed by the Czech state. So how does the Norwegian government feel about all this anger at home and abroad?
We don't have many children in alternative care compared to, for example, other Nordic countries. So why there is so much attention to the Norwegian system? We don't have a good answer to that. But I understand that these cases raise a lot of feelings and emotions.
There's lots of evidence that just parents say isn't accepted.
That's concern we are looking into, and that's why we want to look into a broad review of child welfare cases to see what goes wrong and also learn from the best practice.
Could children be taken off parents simply because the parents had exercised mild corporal punishment.
I can't comment on, this can be several other aspects with one case, but it's important we have programs helping parents avoiding to use corporal punishment in their child's upbringing. And that's actually our answer to your question. But parents has to know the law and live by the law in Norway, regardless of background.
Ruth and Marius's background is religious. All her family are Pentecostals. And he's a foreigner, Romanian. Their supporters think they're victims of discrimination. And in Norway, children with an immigrant parent are 4 times more likely than others to be removed by force from their families.
Thank you.
But there's no means of knowing if cultural difference has been a factor in this case, or in the others I've looked at. Child protection denies any prejudice. We can't be sure exactly what's gone on in this family. But now, Ruth's routine of taking bags of frozen breast milk twice a week to the baby is finally over. Since we filmed with the couple, their baby son has now unexpectedly been returned to them. But they still fear they've got a long fight ahead for the other 4 children, and many more long journeys to those agonisingly short meetings with them, laden with unspoken emotion. What do you think about before these meetings?
We would like to explain them their situation and to comfort them, but we cannot do that since we cannot talk about the case. So when they are telling that they're crying in the evenings and crying themselves to sleep, of course I would like to comfort them, to tell them how to not be afraid.
But of course, it's hard to do that when she's afraid herself.